just responding to the same old shit. Here we go. In 1933, all the states held their own banking holidays because of bank runs. Franklin Roosevelt declared a 4-day national banking holiday and kept all the banks shut until Congress was basically forced to pass a law or do some change to allow the 12 Federal Reserve banks to issue additional currency, paper money, on good assets only, so that the banks could be reopened to meet every legitimate call for withdrawal and create 100% deposit insurance and sustain just immediately, FDIC, to cover this, because people were doing runs on the banks. And as you know, even today, banks don't normally keep the same amount of cash in the building in any form of asset compared to what they have on deposit on paper, because the money is in flux. It's been loaned out, that sort of thing. The numbers do add and subtract and come out to the right number. But at the time, savings and loan meant that your savings were being loaned out. You would get some money, and the bank would get a little bit more than that so they could give it to you. And they would offer people, interest on loans. Depositors stood in line to return their stashed money to the neighborhood banks after everybody calmed down, because it was a better place to put it. They were encouraged to. People were asked very nicely. And over half the money within 2 weeks was redeposited. And over the next few months, almost all of it was redeposited immediately. People didn't trust the banks, but they realized that if the federal government passed a law to say they would cover it if the bank screwed up, not the government, if the bank went bankrupt, they wouldn't, because they outnumber the bank owners and outnumber the people who run the government, and you don't piss off the majority of the population by taking their money and saying, sorry, you can't do that. So that's when FDIC, not necessarily when FDIC started happening, but that really is when it became, no, we will cover the assets. If a bank screws up, it's our problem. They also started regulating banks, which a lot of specific group of people hate. Banks are regulated so that they won't do that again. And even then, we did a bank bailout X number of years ago. Some of you might remember that. And who supported it? Well, we can't let the banks go out of business. No, we can. We can let them go out of business, have the government cover all of it, and then bar the people who caused the bank screw-ups from ever running a bank again. Let them die. Start over. Capitalism. Competition. All of this was done by an amendment they decided to tack on to a previous ruling called the Trading with the Enemy Act of 2017. No, actually, it's 1917. That gave the right to the president to oversee and restrict any and all trade between the United States and its enemies in time of war, and they decided to add it on there because it was a convenient place to put it, and they could codify it into law, etc. And this was referred to as the Emergency Banking Act. 1977, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act was created so it could be used in times of peace and be subject to National Emergencies Act and also subject to veto. But from 1933 to 1977, the president could enact this ruling that was mostly just during times of war, during times of peace, because it was then done during time of peace. This expanded the power of the president to be able to do this somewhat, and it was curtailed in 1977. Again, this was not a way to keep the banks from going bankrupt, or the government didn't go bankrupt. It was about making sure that you and I, if we had money in the bank at the time, wouldn't lose the money due to some screw up. And everybody doing a run on the bank made it harder for people to get their money. And you'll read stories. They told me I didn't have any money. No, they told you they didn't have any money because a bunch of people came in and took out all the money that they had in the cash registers, because a bank with $1 million worth of assets does not actually keep $1 million on premises, because then bank robberies would be very profitable. Did this cause the U.S. government to go bankrupt? No. The money was deposited money that was, at the time, essentially loaned out to people and not readily reliquefiable to give back to the people. The government didn't cover 100% of the debts and go out of business, nor was there a marker to a lizard queen of Aquarius. None of this other shit is actually even a little bit real or has any merit. But you will hear people talk a bizarre, twisted, looping garden path story to explain away that the United States went bankrupt in 1933. The U.S. government did not go bankrupt in 1933. And you will hear people scream at the top of their lungs vindictively that it did because they want it to be something you repeat as a meme ever since then. Government went out of business. The government went out of business. Your crazy uncle would mutter this. Because what happened is the banks were put under a short leash, and it was a choke chain. The banks were told you're not allowed to do irresponsible things. Now, up to that point, most of them didn't. But money speculation is a problem. And now we get, it's a fact. That should just be a whole series. The U.S. was made bankrupt in 1933. Your evidence is based on Russell someone. Get over it. Lol. Neener neeners. And I'm supposed to take this seriously or let it post. 1913, Congress signed a surrender treaty to the international banking cartel. No. 1913, the only reference that's even associated with this, was a ruling that the president could restrict whether or not the U.S. government could do business with enemies of the country. You didn't have a right, if you were Germany or Japan attacking American soldiers, to do business here. We could restrict that or completely kibosh it. That was the rule change. You can read about it. Congress ceded its sovereignty to the Federal Reserve, surrendering its money printing authority. That has some merit to it, that expression or statement. But again, we're talking about 1933. Why are you going back to 1913? 17th Amendment sold all U.S. citizens via income tax to slavery. No, you just don't like income tax being the standard in the United States. And you're lying about what it did and what it means. It seems like slavery. That's fine. You could also get rid of it. That means defunding your precious military and all the other shit you want the money to go for. People who scream about taxes never talk about the fact that they want the government to spend money on shit when they need it. Where that money's supposed to come from? Well, we'll just print it. That's not how it fucking works. Remember? You don't want it to work that way? By your previous sentences? Bankruptcy was inevitable. It wasn't formally declared until later. The Emergency Banking Act, and then he quotes the same one, declared the President Roosevelt being bankrupt and insolvent for the U.S. government. No, it explicitly doesn't say anything like that at all. It said that banks, because of a temporary run on the banks, had to be restabilized. It also had to deal with the fact that many banks were actually having trouble. The U.S. government did not become bankrupt. You don't have the ability to say it did unless you find that actual statement somewhere. Not some fantasy book written by some asshole, who is, I'm calling him an asshole, by the way. It's an insult, but it's appropriate at this point. When you refuse to prove your point, you don't have one. I actually thought about making a video with all of my data and about how unnerving it is to me that everyone keeps saying it has to be a local person who's the murderer in the Delphi, Indiana area. But this is obviously another subject matter, but I thought I'd cover the bankruptcy bullshit first. I'm a paper-pushing researcher and not a techie. I have sent emails to detectives and have not gotten one single reply or any of the communication. I tried to reach out to a few YouTubers covering the case and who I thought lived in the area, just to be shot down exponentially. It seems one just has been using my info to further his own investigations without aiding my research. I will find the video I referred to and share it with you sometime. You have to listen to very closely. Have I interpreted it wrong? I don't believe so. I wish you had an email address. Post the comment under the video. Say do not post. On almost all of my videos, they're set to approve only. So nobody will see it until I see it. Make sure it's a brand new comment so I can see it quicker. Or don't. As for my request, I don't know everything that you're referring to, and I have no data reference. And posting the comments under the video sometimes is useful, but most of the time it isn't. But I do thank you for your input. I think you're being way too harsh on Name That YouTube channel studying the Delphi murders. A lot of people have looked into the geocaching link and stated similar things. Facebook group, Delphi Bridge Guy, the geocaching theory has done some great work on the links to a specific person. You can join and check it out. I don't believe connecting to or blaming a person is of any use. I think it's counterproductive. I think it's meritless, and it isn't just bordering on, it literally is defamation or slander or whatever. Don't do that. And again, the geocaching links that have been brought up all go back to a specific person posting it who won't provide data. It's invalid until that's cleared up. Bring up another source, please. As for the YouTube channel making the claim, I don't care. It's not relevant. I'm not relevant, neither are they. I mean, it's a specific channel, but it doesn't change anything. I'm not into personalities here. The data has to stand on its own. It's not based on my opinion or my attitude towards someone, or their opinion or their attitude towards me or something else. It's based on the data. And the only source anybody brings up is the same posting by a person asserting that there has to be a connection and that someone was following them around and refusing to provide even a simple way for me to locate it. And I want to remind everybody, every time I look up this kind of claim, when I find it, no one goes out of their way to just archive things so that it won't get erased. It's like they want it to be erased. I have a problem with this. But okay, this could be very valid. But all that would mean is that someone had a similar interest in a similar area on a similar subject who was in the area. Hello, YouTube channel video creators deliberately intentionally hurt the case in Delphi. There may be new question of the bridge killer. Was he hospital sick person? Did he depend on catheter tube bag? This is something that I'm not going to cover on that. No, we don't have any basis for that. There's no reason to assume that someone ambulatory enough to walk on a bridge with slats was packing a medical process and device in his pants or pocket. That just doesn't make any sense. That's not even that just makes it like, you know, putting an eye patch on Captain Hook just so he looks more interesting. It's not relevant. We have a shitty video that was shit stabilized by a shit source of information that won't give the raw data. Until we have the raw data, any form of speculation is garbage. Let's stop. I mean, really, this is going way off track. Down the hill, not necessarily referring to girl or girls. Time and space not fit, bridge perspective. More than one person commit the crime. In order for one person to cause two people to be harmed, extremely violent at close range, or use a taser or some other MacGuffin here, so the murder could last into the evening. Theories surrounding reality and fact. If this area was not really, really sparsely traveled, you might be able to do that. But it was sparsely traveled. But the idea that the area would suddenly have a complete lack of anybody going by, it would be too risky to do it for a long period of time. This would have to be, in my opinion, this is an opinion, something done rather quickly and out of sight. I don't know what caused this, what happened. We don't have the data, and any data that may be available has not been provided by the police department. Until the information is provided, we have nothing to work with. You can speculate all you want to. I'm just happy to found out recently where they probably were found definitively. There's two locations possible. One's down by a road and one's just below the cemetery to the east. But either way, that's a pretty good distance to go through mud or over a shallow water source or whatever. And we don't have any basis for any of this. True, we could if we had the data. Again, lack of data. Theories surround reality and or fact. If a taser gun could be used to murder, could take longer. Okay, this is like speculating on whether or not the person was wearing a specific kind of hat. If the video image and data we have is such shit that we can't even figure out what really the person looked like at all, or even their build at this point, or what they were wearing properly and get a good idea of it, we don't have any basis for anything. And the fact that we have two diametrically opposing sketches done of who the person they're looking for is, not necessarily the person on the bridge. That's the other thing. It's not the bridge guy that the second picture is. It's a second suspect or a person of interest. And we have a police department that's being tight-lipped about this. It's quite useless. There's no reason to speculate any further. We're done. Next, again, on the 1933 bankruptcy of the United States, this is based on literally lying about something that's recorded history that had, at one time, millions and millions of witnesses because they were alive at the time. I don't see a point in discussing it. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with it.